Morning everybody, it's Ben with Red Barn and I'm here in beautiful Hartville, Ohio at Hartville Hardware, and this morning I am teaching basics of deep pour epoxy using epoxy flow cast, and we're going to be going through the basics of what I do every pour, teaching that to the wonderful students that we have signed up. It's a really great class. It's one of the few classes where the student actually does the work, and at the end of it you get your own serving tray, charcuterie board, whatever you want to call it. Pick your own wood, pick your own epoxy coloring, everything. It's a really hands-on class, but we're going to go through the basics of that, from the downfalls, from how to set up the forms, the correct products to use that I've found that are most consistent, start to finish. It's a great class here at Hartville Hardware. I think this year we had 30 slots. All 30 have been sold. Actually, we're teaching 33 students this year because of free tickets that we gave away. So, going to be going through that today. You'll get to see some of the highlights of that, all the different products we use and how I set it up, and all that fun stuff. So, be sure to watch the whole video all the way to the end. You'll get all sorts of great information at the end about epoxy, ecopoxy.com and Red Barn Home Furnishings, and some discounts that we have available on both of those websites. So be sure to watch the whole video, like, subscribe, follow, and enjoy and bask in ecopoxy deep pour 101. Ready to go. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out this morning on this beautiful, it's not spring day yet, but this beautiful Ohio day. I'm Ben Crawford. I'm with Red Barn Home Furnishings. If you aren't aware, that is a custom furniture company that I own and operate. I operate down in Minerville House, just a half an hour away from here. Do all sorts of different custom furniture. I've obviously become known because of the epoxy work, but I do all range of custom furniture and cabinetry, from kitchens to bathrooms, up to the giant conference tables, the river tables, things like that. One of the things that makes me unique is that I harvest all my own lumber. So because of that, I have a little bit different insight into the process of doing the epoxy, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go through a lot of my best practices that I've developed over doing this for 8 years now with the epoxy. Been doing furniture for 11, but I started developing the epoxy process. I started getting into it just to fill character spots in lumber that I was using for customers' pieces, you know, knot holes, things like that. That's how I got into it, very small pours, and have slowly worked up to the big stuff. And after doing the real small stuff for a couple, 3 years, I got a wild idea to do a river table because I'd seen people doing it, and started trying that and failed epically the first time I did it. And so because of those painful epic fails that I've experienced, that's the stuff I'm going to talk to you about today to help prevent you from having those sorts of things. We're going to talk about the forms themselves, wood selection, all the ins and outs of this particular product, Ecopoxy, which from my experience is the best product that's out there. I've used 4 or 5 different epoxies, and this one is the most consistent product. There's other ones that some people will say are better price point, some people will say this one cures faster, and so on and so forth. But from a consistency, not having curing issues or soft issues where it doesn't cure all the way, or curing too fast, curing too slow, temperature sensitivity. There's so many things that go into it, and this one is the most consistent and reliable product there is. There's ones out there that are cheaper, like you can go into Lowe's or Home Depot, and they have some up in front here that are cheaper too, and it's a very inconsistent product. Sometimes you'll get a good pour, sometimes you get a really bad pour. So that's why we're teaching this class using Ecopoxy Flowcast. I'll also talk about the difference between the 2 different products as well. But that's a little bit of my background. I always like to ask who came the farthest distance. How far did everybody come this morning? Cuyahoga Falls, all right. About an hour, Auburn. Twinsburg, all right. I've been there. My brother lived in Twinsburg for 5 years. Massillon,
Falls as well.
Cuyahoga Falls, so Auburn wins, an hour away. We had, for the class, the farthest somebody came was Columbus, I think. And then for the demos downstairs, the farthest somebody came to watch me do a demo was Alabama. But I appreciate everybody coming out. Usually at these classes, I'm like, we fought through the snow. Not today. So I was telling her this is my daughter over here, by the way, Lainey.
Hi.
She's going to be recording while we're going today, so just ignore her. Because if anybody follows me on social media, which if you don't, please do on Instagram and YouTube, subscribe to those. We're shooting all sorts of content for those platforms to help move our products forward as far as the furniture goes. Anyways, as I was saying, I don't remember what I was saying.
Why are we filming?
Oh, well, yeah, why we're filming. I covered that. Anyways, let's just get right into it. The forms themselves. A lot of questions that I get about the forms. You don't have your form. Let me grab yours. So the forms themselves, it's a process that I've come up with. There's lots of different forms available out there. You can get pre-made silicone forms. Depending on the size of the pour you're doing, like we were just talking to one of the guys here at Hartville, does a lot of wood turning, and he makes ornaments. And he's doing real small pieces, like this big. So if you're doing something like that, those pre-made silicone forms are going to be good for that situation because you can use them time and time and time and time again. And they're very small and easy to deal with. These forms are more for like just about this size. You can go a little bit smaller with these, but these become tedious any smaller than this. These are for what I would call a small piece. Anything smaller than this maybe would be, I don't know, premium or something. But extra small pieces are smaller than this to me. This is the smallest stuff I make right here. These are for this size and up. So like when I made a 14-foot conference table with a double river in it, that was all out of this stuff. And I built an entire table form underneath of it to hold it flat so it didn't sag in the middle. And that's one of the reasons why I use these. So the silicone forms are great up until about this size. At this size, if you do a silicone form, you'll get a bulge right here in the middle where it'll sink down. And that's where this holds more rigid once you get to this size and bigger. And this is a 16 by 12. Once you get up to, say, 16 by 24, that's coffee table size. This is still gonna hold strong up to that. You get up to like a 4 by 4, 4 feet by 4 feet, then you're gonna have to start to build some structure underneath that to deal with a little bit of sag you get in the middle. But for medium size to small size stuff, these are great. And what the form is made of is 3/4 inch coated melamine board. That gives you nice structure. I put 3-inch sides on it because the deepest you can pour with this in a single pour is 1.5 inches. If you want to go more than that, you can. You have to do multiple pours though. You can always make the side bigger depending on how big you want to go. Okay. So like back at my shop right now, we're prepping to do a 12-inch deep pour. We're casting a deer skull inside of the coffee table. So with that one, the form's going to be much bigger, obviously, and you got to build all sorts of stuff around it, and that's going to be whatever that is, 8 separate pours. So this form, 3/4 inch coated melamine. There's a couple reasons why I use coated melamine versus just regular plywood. You can use regular plywood if you're wanting to have wood grain translate into the piece. That's like the art feel that you're going for, where you want it to look like wood grain epoxy, because whatever you cast it into is going to translate out into the finished piece. So with this, that's why I use the coated melamine board, because it's a flat surface and makes for the least amount of sanding or removing of lines out of the piece once it gets out of the form. Now, sometimes you will hear people talk about, or you will see, and I say this all the time, and it's one of the reasons why we're creating a lot of content for YouTube, is because there is so much bad information as far as epoxy goes out there. Like, of all the epoxy pours out there, 95% of them are wrong. In my opinion, because most of them, you see them out there, guys don't pull stuff down after they have the product fail later on. There's never failure videos. It's very rare. You only ever see them make the pour and when they deliver it to the customer in a month. And there's no 2 years down the road video of that table ripping itself apart because it was done improperly. So there's only one place that I've seen that has done that. And they were like, yeah, we screwed up. But everybody else, you never see that. And the reason I know that that happens is because I used to follow that same process until I had some tables fail on me and then develop my own process. So one thing you'll hear people say is that you don't need to put this release tape on the form, that you can just spray it with polyurethane and it'll pop right out. That's not true. It won't pop right out. And as soon as you add any foreign matter, as far as chemical matter, like you can cast things into the epoxy, like if you've seen my stuff, we've done Star Wars figurines and spent casings and golf balls and baseball turf and baseball gloves, and baseball bats, and all sorts of stuff I've cast into epoxy. That's all fine and dandy. But when you start adding polyurethane, oils, waxes, things like that to try and create a barrier in here or to seal the wood itself, that compromises the chemical integrity of this chemical reaction that's happening in the form, because you're adding something in there that's not supposed to be in there. So I always say never coat the form in anything other than the release tape. The release tape is made specifically to release it. If you don't want to spend the money on the Epoxy release tape, because it is $25 a roll, there are other alternatives out there. Tie-back tape, tuck tape, it's a Canadian product, and then there's it's just like red tape they sell up front here. The advantage to this tape specifically, Epoxy's tape, is it's the widest of all the options. So the other ones are all, it doesn't sound like much, but the tuck tape is 2.5 inches wide. This is 3 inches wide. Tuck tape is $17 a roll. This is $25 a roll. So at the end of the day, you use the same amount of material. It's just the initial upfront price, which way you think you're gonna go with it. But I prefer this because it's a wider tape. I do my sides in 3 inches, so I only have to run one bead of tape down it and it's covered. And it holds up the best. Some of those tapes will peel up a little bit. Painter's tape, like frog tape, won't work at all. Like, it gets ugly. The epoxy will dissolve the adhesive of the painter's tape, and the painter's tape will all start floating up off of it. It'll be a terrible, god-awful mess. So that's why I always like using the epoxy tape, but I did start out with tuck tape. That's a quality product too. It does the same job. So you have the 3/4 inch melamine board, they sell that here. The epoxy tape, they sell that here. The caulking. So you'll see all the edges, seams, have a bead of caulking. He's like, well, what about this? And pulls it off. You don't want to break that seal. The reason being is, the reason that you have to seal this, and you also see people will like seal the seam itself and then put it together. That's all fine and dandy if you want to do that, but you don't know for sure it's sealed. I used to do that until I had $400 of epoxy on the floor, because you don't know for sure if it's sealed. This way you know it's sealed. You can see it, you can touch it, you can look and see, is it beaded up? All you have to do is just make your form an inch bigger in both directions. You're gonna lose a little bit anyways, even if you do it the other way. So at least this way you know for sure it's not going to leak. Because that is, you can ask her, that is my number one worry every time I do a pour is that I get a leak. Because once this stuff starts leaking, there is no stopping it. Because the viscosity of this, it's one of the great things about it. It's got viscosity of water. It gets everywhere in character pieces. You don't have to worry about it not soaking into pieces that are real wormy or anything like that. It will soak in. But if you have a hole in your form, it will also soak into that hole and empty out like that. The product I used to use, which is called Diamond Coat, I think it's called countertop epoxy now, had a thicker viscosity, but had a really short cure time. I'm talking like 16 hours. And it used to rip itself apart because it would heat up so much. This stuff has a 4-day cure time and it doesn't rip itself apart. That's why I made the switch. But I was used to using the real thick stuff and I didn't seal my edges very well. And you can see the mistakes in my shop. There's a huge puddle where this stuff ran out in a matter of 5 minutes. Like it was gone. It was $400 or $500 of epoxy, just gone. So that's another one. Some people like to do the caulking and then put it together. I like to have them put together, then do the caulking. When you're using the melamine board, you want to pre-drill the holes because even self-tapping screws will slide around when you're screwing in this melamine board. So that's the form. It holds together real great. You have to be careful with the bigger ones that you don't move them around once you've got them sealed up because it will break that bead. That's one of the mistakes I made. We have this big workbench and I built it out on the workbench and then we moved it into the paint room, and in moving it into the paint room we broke the bead. Once again, about $1,000 of epoxy on the floor. So wherever you build it, leave it in that spot. Yes. Thank you. GE Windows and Doors Caulking Clear. We've used white before. White, for whatever reason, doesn't let go of the epoxy. And if you use kitchen and bath, it won't let go either. It's specifically formulated to hold on, like to hold. Windows and doors hold on when you want it to hold, and when you pop it out of the form, you can peel it right off of that epoxy, and you have no problems with the window and door holding on when you don't want it to hold, but it holds when it needs to. The silicone part, yeah, the silicone caulking, GE window and door clear. Like I said, I've used the different colored ones. They don't, something with them, something in the pigment doesn't want to let go. DAP products are absolute trash in this application. They do not work, ever. I've tried them multiple times because the hardware store down closer to my shop, that's the only product they carry, and I've tried to use DAP products and it does not work. For whatever reason, their caulking doesn't cure all the way. It's the wildest thing. Anyways, so GE clear silicone. Thank you for asking that because I forgot to say it. Yeah.
For your really large pours, what sort of a table do you use? Is it like a steel table, I-beam, something super rigid, so that you could still, kind of get things loosened up and so on and so forth?
I have big,
Well, in the paint room, I just use big sawhorses. I have 2x4 sawhorses, but for the real big pours, I have giant workbenches made out of 2x10s and 6x6s that I walk on them. Like, once I get real big pieces, I'm up on top of the workbench working. So the workbenches can hold, I don't know, 6,000 or 7,000 pounds. So I make my own stuff. But a steel table would be all right. You don't want it to sag in the middle, obviously. So, but that's a good question. Any questions about the forms? No? Okay. So the forms themselves, like I talked about, the tape, the reason that I use those forms is because of the very thin viscosity of the eco epoxy product. let's talk about wood selection real quick. So, as everybody notices, you have ash in front of you right now. That ash is we'll call it a wormy ash. That tree, we cut that down 3 years ago, down outside of Alliance. We salvaged it off of a property from the emerald ash borer. There are certain species of wood you don't want to use for epoxy, for obvious reasons. Once I say, you'll be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. First of all, just think about the porous nature of the wood you're going to use. So domestically grown woods that do very well with epoxy, you're talking about walnut, cherry, ash, white oak, elm will do okay. Box elder does all right. It's a little porous. Hard maple, and did I say elm already? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ones that you don't want to use, any pine species. Like, the epoxy is expensive. Don't go cheap on wood. But the pine's also extremely porous. Poplar, extremely porous. Red oak, extremely porous. So what that's going to cause problems with is you're going to have a ton of epoxy soak into the wood itself, and you end up going to come up short of your pour because the wood itself is going to soak up half of the epoxy. With those other woods, they're very, very dense, and you're going to get a good soak, but you're not going to lose a ton of epoxy to just completely soaking in. Another one that I feel is a bad wood to use with epoxy is hickory. Reason being, even though hickory is extremely dense and hard, the reason you don't want to use hickory is it's extremely difficult to get hickory properly dry, and hickory has a nasty tendency in slab form to move excessively in humidity changes. That's why if you ever notice, hickory cabinets, hickory furniture is all a bunch of little pieces of hickory glued back together. They cut it up in a bunch of little strips and then glue it back together. Because in big pieces, and I unfortunately learned this the hard way, we did this gigantic 12-foot table for this wonderful couple, hickory tree off their property, dried it, and got it together, got it in their house, had a very rigid frame underneath of it, came back and it had cupped a half an inch. It had cupped a half an inch in the matter of 3 months from the heat of the house because that hickory just pushed itself up. We went in and did all sorts of relief cuts underneath and pulled it back down flat. 6 months later, did the same thing. Hickory, in slab form, hickory is not the wood you want to work with. If you're doing cabinetry and stuff like that, and you're getting hickory pre-made boards from like Bear Brothers or something like that, that's fine. All that wood, they've already dealt with all that. They've cut in small strips. That's fine if that's something you want to do. But in a big table application, single slab, you don't want to mess with hickory. Red oak's another one that people want to use, but they can't because it's so porous. I think I talked about this at the demo. In February, you can literally suck water like a straw through red oak. It's so porous. If you ever go down to the Paul Bunyan show down in Cambridge, anybody ever been to that? They have demos where people are drinking through red oak straws. So that's another reason why you don't want to use that. Those are the only ones off the top of my head. There's a lot of exotics do very, very well with epoxy. We did a rosewood pour. I've done map of burl pours. I haven't done Purple Heart or anything like that, but I've seen where it's out there. Once again, with those ones, you don't know what it looks like in a year. You also want to be careful doing pours on ingrain wood. So like cookies. Cookies are very, very volatile pieces of wood. Anybody ever work with cookies? You know what I mean by cookies? where instead of typically you would cut lengthwise on a log and get dimensional lumber on it like this. A cookie is where you lay it down and you cut slices off of it. Cookies are very, very volatile when they dry, and they have a tendency to Pac-Man. They open up like that and look like Pac-Man. So you have to be really, really careful when you're doing pours with cookies that the cookie's properly dried. And that's another thing that I talk about when we're going through the wood selection. You want to make sure that it's wood that has been kiln dried. Air dried wood doesn't cut it. Reason being, and I always have somebody's like, well, it's been sitting in the barn for 20 years, 30 years, whatever. It's just simple physics. Due to the humidity here in wonderful Ohio, the wood will never, ever dry under 11%. Won't happen, never, won't happen. And to use it in this application, you have to get it under 6. So it has to be finished off in a kiln. It has to be, there's no way around it. And not a solar kiln either. Solar kilns are garbage. It has to be an electric controlled kiln. There's only a handful of those around that you can dry your own stuff. A lot of companies sell kiln dried stuff. I know they have kiln dried here that is appropriately dried. I kiln dry stuff for people, and then I think Bear Brothers has kiln dry that's appropriately, and I think so does Time. There's a lot of people out there selling lumber that don't properly dry it because they don't know any. They're not trying to rip anybody off. They just don't know any better. They think put it in a solar kiln or 10% is good enough, or I've had this disagreement with a good friend of mine who's a certified master woodworker for 30 years, and he makes pipe organs, and they use air dried wood, and I'm like, you're crazy. But anyways, for this application, you want to have kiln dried wood just simply because air dried wood doesn't get dried all the way. Everybody's been in an old farmhouse somewhere where the doors stick in the summertime. In the wintertime, they swing open in the middle of the night because it's so dry. You have the same thing with wood. There's the story I always like to tell is there's a coffee shop over in Alliance, and they did all the countertops themselves. Did a beautiful job, beautiful countertops, white oak. I was in there buying coffee the one day, and I looked down at the countertop and I noticed they had a piece of glass to have all their pastries on display. And the wood countertop was this much smaller than the glass. I was like, wow, did you not have a piece of wood big enough? And he's like, no, when we put that in, they were the same size. That wood had shrunk 1.5 inches because they put it in there green. They didn't know any better. And that's what you're gonna have the same thing happen with your pieces. If it's not properly dried, you're going to have it separate off the epoxy. So that's my 2 cents on wood selection. Yes, sir.
Will kiln dried wood reabsorb some moisture?
Correct.
Over time?
It will. So the reason you want to go to 6%, this gets into the science. This is when my kids like zone out when I start talking about this. I've only had one kid, not my own child. I do forestry classes with 7th graders. One kid was like, wow, that's amazing, out of like 50 kids. Anyways, so you want to get to 6% because at 6% is where the cellular structure of the wood collapses. At 6%, the cells collapse and they won't absorb past 12% anymore. So if you don't get that collapsed cellular structure at 6, if you only dry to 10 or to 8 or to 9 or to 7, it doesn't collapse it and it will absorb all the way up to 20 again. So that's why it's so important to hit that 6. I actually dry everything to 5.5 to make sure that everything in the kiln gets dried to 6, because down in the middle of the stack it never gets all the way. So that's why I do that. It will still absorb some, and you will still get some movement, especially if you're doing bigger pieces. Like this is a big giant piece of wood. No matter how much I dry this, it's still going to move a little bit. And you get it into big tables, it's still going to move a little bit. It's just minimizing that. So good question. All right, we're up against it. So wood selection forms. The wood today, like I said, is ash. It's wormy ash. The things that we're going to do today is you're going to put these feet on the forms. We're going to have everybody gets to pick out their own colors. I'm going to show you how to mix this stuff up, and then we're going to pour it and set it for the day. And then next week you'll come back. They'll already be out of the forms next week. I'll have all the extra trimmed off. Any extra that you pour over is going to be gone, and they'll be ready for you to sand and do the final stages of completing the piece, and then you get to take it home. You'll also be able to put finish on it if you want. If you don't want to put finish on it, like if you want to put handles on it, or you have your own finish that you like that's different from what we have available, you're welcome to do that too. But that's what we're going to get through today. So the first thing that I want you to do is we're going to start putting the feet on these forms. And then once the feet are on the forms, I'm going to have you measure the volume of the space, and then we're going to talk about mixing this up, because every epoxy is different. This is a 2-to-1 mixture, so the math of it's fun to do. When we start talking about cubic inches and things like that, that's where everybody's just like, eh. I have my 12-year-old's here with me usually, and he'll rattle the formulas off for everybody, but he's not here today. He wanted to sleep. But so I'll start passing these drills around and have you start attaching the feet to the forms. If you don't have a drill, what I'm going to also have passing around is the tape, because you got little blocks there. I'm going to have you tape the blocks up so they don't stick into the epoxy as much. And plus I also want everybody to get comfortable with how super sticky this stuff is. Okay, so we'll start the tape here. Once again, I'll do one just to show you. It's raining. Hear that? Oh man, where you at? There you are. So, super sticky. No, it's not. This is super slippery. So the tape itself, you don't have to get crazy wrapping these up. You want to put tape on this because you are going to pour extra up over top of the board, and you don't want this gluing down to your board essentially. So this is just to protect it. Like I said, this is the part that people struggle with the most. You wouldn't believe it, but especially some of the big old boys that come in here and they got sausage fingers and they're just like, they struggle with it. But it doesn't have to be perfect. You're just making it to where it's going to be nice and easy for me to get that separated out when these dry up. Okay? So you guys can start on those there, and then on the outside we'll start with the feet. Sorry, these drills are a little worn out. These are from my shop, and most of these forms have been used already, so there could already be holes in them to make it level. If you feel like the holes that are in there are a little worn out, you want to put a new one in, that's fine. Just make sure you don't put the screw in a spot where it's going to come through the form, because that would bring you to a screeching halt real fast as far as your project for today. So we can start with that, and if you need help, just holler at me. I'm happy to help. And then once we get the blocks wrapped and the feet on, then we'll start talking about figuring out volume. So here's what you're going to want to do. Feet are going to go on like this. Like this. So, yeah, this one's been used before. Yep, so I'll go ahead and get this one started for you so everybody sees how to do it. You don't want to over tighten it either.
That's tight enough where you have it?
Yep. Just like that. If you're gonna go on like that. Yes, ma'am. Like I said, if you get stuck or if you need help, just holler at me. Yep. Perfect. Got it. Anybody know the formula for cubic? Does anybody know the formula for cubic inches off the top of your head? Length by width by thickness. Length by width by thickness. That gets you cubic inches. So what you're going to measure is, to figure out how much you need, is you're going to measure the open area within your form. So like this one, for instance, you've got it sitting in the middle. The easiest way to do it is to set it to one side and then open measure the open area in the thickness. So you'll want to measure the open area of your form, and that will give you your cubic inches. So,
Are we going to the thickness of our sample wood or the full thickness?
thickness of the wood itself. You don't want to. We're not pouring all. That's a lot of waste.
Yeah.
So I can give you the answer on the wood. The wood is 1 1/8 inches thick, and the forms themselves are 17 inches long. The opening. So all you need to figure out is the width of your open area. Yeah, you're figuring it out. I'm not doing it. That's the beauty of this class, Lisa. I haven't had anybody complain so far, is you're doing all the work. I'm just guiding you. So you're going to measure this area. That's what you need to find out, what the cubic inches of that right there is. And then obviously some of you, your pieces don't fill up the whole length of the form, so you're going to need to add a little bit for that area to be filled in. So let's figure out that open area, what the cubic inches in that open area is.
I have a cell phone that is a beautiful thing.
And then once you find the cubic inches, we're going to convert it over to ounces.
You said 1 1/8
1 1/8 thickness, yep.
and 17.
17 long is what it should be.
I'm just gonna wait till somebody else figures it out first and then ask them how they did. Yep.
Length by width by thickness. So for your piece, you're right there, that distance. And there's if you need a measuring tape, there's measuring tapes.
That changes everything.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're just wanting to not to touch.
We just wait for the whole thing.
That's yours.
All set. I got it.
It's not flush. So you just. Oh, don't do that.
I have it
So is it
left unsupervised.
here?
So like, you're gonna want to measure the top. You gotta fill all the way to the top. So that distance, so you're at 5, but you're also gonna want to add a 1/4 inch, because this is over here has to fill too. You get 5 1/4, and we're gonna add a little bit of this too when we get the calculation done. But you don't have to do that right now. I'll explain when we get into it. So it's 5 1/4, and then 5 1/4 by 17 by 1 1/8 inches, which is 1.125. Free calculation. Now, not to waterboard you with information here, while you're figuring out the calculations, one thing to remember, before we pour, you're going to have to sand these boards up. I haven't sanded them at all, and you're going to have to clean the live edge up. Because one of the big mistakes that people make is they leave bark on the pieces. Bark cannot be left on the piece. Bark is a barrier that will fail at some point. So once you figure out the cubic area, then you're welcome to come up, grab a sander, and start sanding your board down and cleaning up that live edge. The live edge is the only side you need to sand. The other edges don't matter. The live Yes, ma'am. 100.4 cubic inches, right? Oh. Is this by this? By this? Yeah. So go ahead and write that down. And then you can start sanding on your live edge here and get that prepped, and then we'll do the conversion over to ounces once everybody's ready. It doesn't matter. Everybody usually just kind of, yeah.
The Symphony of Sanders.
At Ohio State, I started out in engineering. And I couldn't figure the chemistry out and had to switch to forestry. My degree's in forestry. And I remember, I was like, well, I'll switch over. Forestry's got to be easier. The math requirements for forestry were the same as engineering. Luckily, I was good at math, but chemistry I sucked at it for some reason. Now I do chemical reaction stuff. So mathematics, unfortunately, is a huge part of it. Have fun figuring out the volume per acre of trees when you're out in the woods. That one makes me go cross-eyed. But, so anyways, the next conversion, it's real easy. You pick up your phone, you Google cubic inches to ounces, and then put that number in the formula. And that gives you how many ounces you need. So Google cubic inches to ounces. It'll come up with a calculator, a real easy one. And the number that you had for your cubic inches, you put into the cubic inches, and it tells you how many ounces you'll need. And everybody should be within the same general area because the woods are all essentially about the same. 91, so where are we at? 50, there we are, perfect, sorry. So 50, where are you at? Perfect, 59. 50, you're right around 50. Perfect. Good. 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 You have a real big area. This is 16. Yeah. What was the number you came up with? Oh, 17.
I was a special education. So that's more like
7 1/4 is what you want to go with. 7 1/4 by 17.
Sorry about that.
You're right. That's low. Times 1.125. Times 5 1/4. 100, that's more right. 84, that's right. You're good. Yep. So write down the 84 there. So everybody has their number now. It's a 2-to-1 mixture. So I always recommend mixing more than not enough. Okay? So, and you also have to go by what the bucket has available, the measurements on. Okay? So like you were at 55, right? 50-ish? So what's a number that's available on here that is easy to divide by 3? 64 divided by 3, that's not going to be easy. So, actually, let me think. 64 divided by 3 is 30, no, 20, 21 point that. This is where I pull my phone out. 21.33. Nope. You're going to want to round up higher than that yet. So he was at 50. 64, 42. So you're going to have a hard time figuring out 42 here. So if you go up to 72, and you're going to have, you want it over top of it anyways. So take 72, divide 72 by 3, and then multiply that number by 2. And that gives you how many ounces of resin you need. And then the other number is how many ounces of hardener you need. because your total volume is going to be 72 for you. So 72, it's 48, you said? So 48 ounces of resin, 24 ounces of hardener gives you 72. Does that make sense to everybody? It's variable. This is one that drives people crazy. I eyeball it. If I feel like I got a lot of open space and I need more there, I'll round up higher. So like you're at, what was the number? 58. So for you, I'd round up to 72. So if you're in the 50s or 60s, I would round up to 72 just to make your life easier. 84, I would round up to 96. And you were in the 50s? 63, so yeah, 72. They dropped the price of this. It's one of the things that the price is coming down apparently. They were for the 30-liter kit. Obviously they have multiple sizes. The 30-liter kit used to be $739. It's only $659 now. So it came down quite a bit. It's 10%. Plus you have a 10% off. So that's from 6 months ago, that's 20% off of what it was. So I'll start coming around. You tell me what your total ounces are and then how many ounces of resin you need the first time, okay? Where you at?
48.
48. So your total 72, right?
Yep.
Okay. Your total, you're 64. Yep. Definitely gonna need to open the other kit. I'll come back with the hardener and then you'll start mixing. 48. Okay. Of course, these kits get heavy, so not everybody's using the big 30-liter kits. Okay. I usually run out around right here. So 72 and 48. 48 is the resin, right?
48 and 24.
Yep. 72 is your total.
Yep.
Okay. And both of you gentlemen are 48 as well, correct? Perfect. 48. Then I'll come back through with the resin, or the hardener rather.
What kind of engineering were you?
Civil. The dumb one.
Electrical engineers.
Yeah. My cousin actually has his PhD in civil engineering from Georgia Tech.
Oh wow.
He's the head of the engineering department at Georgia Tech. He was the head of engineering for West Point for a lifetime. He was a general in the Army. And he showed me that I wasn't smart enough for engineering. My son, my 12-year-old, he just won some Math Olympics tournament last weekend, and he was that 2 weeks ago. He says he wants to do mechanical engineering, I think. Yeah, it is. Oh, Minerva, there you go. All right, so your total was 96, right?
Right.
We got 64 in here right now. So I'm coming up there. Yeah, okay. And then once I pour this in, you'll notice, one thing to remember, you'll notice it'll smell like ammonia. Excuse me. This part, the resin's not bad stuff. This part's the bad stuff. So like if you're doing this in an enclosed area or something like that, make sure you open the windows. There are temperature requirements. You got to have it at 70 degrees is where you need to be. That's a sweet spot. But it's better to be colder than hotter. So it'll still cure at 60, 55. It just takes longer. But if you're too hot, so you're in the 80s or 90s, then you'll overheat the chemical reaction. You have cracking problems. So my point is, don't sit here and huff the fumes that come off of it. You can mix it. You're fine. If you want a mask, there's masks available. But just don't like overdo it. 96. Yeah. For 2 minutes. And then once you get your 2 minutes down, you pick out your colors, put the colors in, mix it for another 30 seconds, and you're good to go. 72, right?
Yes.
72. Hand it to you. 96, yes ma'am. Yep, good. 72. Yep, you're going to mix it in like you're baking cookies. Fold it in. $72. 72.
I'll get that on tape.
Now my oldest son, he went to Kent. He said he wanted to be a mechanical engineer. He made it one semester and then went in the Army. And now he's a Chinook mechanic. He's stationed in Korea. What part of the Chinook is he certified, Lane? Engines and props, is that right? He sends videos every once in a while working on the engines.
So I asked, does he enjoy like cities in Korea?
He loves it.
Yeah, I was gonna say like just the scenery and the. How long has he been out there?
2 minutes. It's 7 months.
Year and
He's been there 7 months.
That's such like a fun life experience.
Yeah.
Like,
I keep telling him because he gets to pick his duty station next because I guess Korea's not a desirable duty station. I keep telling him to go to Germany next, but anyway, so 2 minutes, you're folding it in like you're baking cookies, making a cake, getting the wet ingredients mixed in with the dry ingredients. You're going to see as you're mixing it, you can already see it's really clearing up from when I first poured it out. It's getting real nice and clear. When you hit that 2 minute mark, then grab the pigment and the coloring and go ahead and put that in there and mix it to the color that you want. We've seen all sorts of combinations. There's no wrong combination. Just remember that you need a lot to make it. The flaking, you need a lot to make the flaking like translate, especially if you're mixing colors. Of an inch. So the UV coat, which is the countertop coating of the same company, you can do thinner with, and that would be good for laser engraving and filling in there. But that product is a one-to-one mixture. It's a little bit different process, and you can't use a power mixer with that. It's hand mix only. because it's really thick. The cure time on this is 4 days. The cure time on UV coat is 12 hours. So it's real quick. The pot time on Flowcast, this product, you have 6 hours. 6 hours on this product. The other product, UV coat, which is the countertop, you have 20 minutes. And the UV coat will get a very aggressive chemical reaction if you don't get it out of the bucket. There's lots of colors up here. Feel free to pick through whatever you want. Whatever you want. Just so you know, the Hartville people come in afterwards and they critique the crap out of what you're doing. That's not true.
Now, can you mix this too much with the flakes and everything?
No. It just you just once you're done, you know, you gotta let it settle down. Yeah, you gotta let it settle down. Correct. You're driving more air bubbles in. Have you watched my demos or something? Or
I tried this once in like little things.
downstairs? Yeah, your faces seem very familiar. Because poly and epoxy do not play well together at all. You'll see lots of videos out there, people like, oh, you got to seal the wood with the poly, yada, yada, yada. They never show what that looks like in 2 years. Ever, ever, ever. And there's a reason for that. There's some big accounts that do a lot of business that are doing it wrong. And I see it and keep my mouth shut and keep moving, and you can't do that. You just can't, because it causes all sorts of problems. So like if you do see micro bubbling, if you see little microscopic bubbles in there, totally normal. And like I say at the demos, I always say, if somebody picks up your piece, gets up close to it like this and says there's tiny little bubbles in there, kick them out of your house, because they're not your friend.
No, I made it sound a little better. I had a bubble big enough that I could, and so I also during your one downstairs, I didn't go real deep. So the bubble would pop, you could actually see it through and see the wood flow. Is that because I wasn't deep enough, or?
Probably wasn't deep enough.
I was only like deep.
Yeah, you got to be
16.
minimum a quarter. Yep, minimum a quarter on this product. On this product. So once you open it, 6 months. Once you open it, 6 months. That's what Epoxy tells me. The Flowcast, we go through it pretty quick. Well, if you have your color the way you like it, you are welcome to start pouring. Now, a couple things to remember when you're pouring. Slow, even pour. Nice and slow pouring it out. Like you're pouring a beer. Nice and slow. Because once again, you're driving more bubbles into it. They got to come out. So nice, slow, even pour. Don't freak out if it comes up over top of the wood. It's kind of what you want anyways. So you get a real good soak, because as this cures, you're going to lose a little bit of thickness. It's going to cure down. So don't freak out about that. If the form starts to leak, just get out of the way and I'll start cleaning it up. All right. But go ahead and pull your paint paddle out of the way. You're welcome to just pitch it. And go ahead and you're welcome to just pour nice and slow. Like I said, like you're doing, the best thing I can come up with is pouring a beer. There's better ways to do it than that, but there's a better analogy. Thank you.
What do I need here? Do a scarlet decoration. It's kind of off.
Oh, well,
Too late.
yeah, those two colors aren't going to mix. So it's either, do you want a gray or red?
Neither.
That's all right.
I'm good with it.
I kind of like it.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
You sure?
It'll work. Yeah, I think that's actually good.
I think it will. Where you start.
Personal preference.
If you know what you want.
Yeah.
To have a preference.
True. True story.
Alright,
Yep, you're welcome.
Hop here.
You can pour it right here, nice and slow, just like your sister's doing. Nice and slow.
Oh my God, I love this.
You're done. You're good. 30 seconds was your stir time. Yep, nice, easy. Nice and easy pour. Should be running over. Totally fine. If it is,
Too much over?
nah, it's fine. You're good. You're good. I did my wife's desk in a very similar color.
Yeah, I was surprised you found so much black.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yep, you're good. You're perfect. There's no wrong way to pour as long as you just don't do that. All right, now the last step before you're done for the day is to, you're probably going to want to put the rest of it in there. Is to pop the bubbles with the torch. It's everybody's favorite part. So, torches, when you're doing the torching, you want to keep the torch moving. You don't want to hold it in one spot like that, because it'll burn it. I'm just gonna do your bucket. I'm not gonna steal this from you. You just kind of moving it around, nice, quick, and easy. There you go.
Thank you.
Pull that trigger. One more time. You're all right.
There we go.
So does,
Turn it up a little bit more.
does this need to be over top of there, or is
It's
it
fine.
good? It's good. Okay.
You like so how it has I don't know if the like the marbling or whatever. If we went through, you could almost like use this on more wood.
Yeah, you have to wait 24 hours to do that though. If you do it right now, it's just gonna go away. So in 24 hours, you come back and be like a taffy consistency. Then you can put them in. You got pop bubbles again, and then it should stick. But it'll turn on itself. The chemical reaction is what actually puts the marbling in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And if you were to do multiple colors like scarlet and gray, it would be two different pours.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking I could that the flakes would kind of not mix in as
Yeah.
they did. And they kind of clumped. I mean,
Yeah. So, yeah, that's perfect. So you'll notice it'll keep bubbling. When you're doing it, you'll keep getting bubbles. That's totally fine. It's totally normal. It's not a big deal. When I do pours, I do them in the afternoon, like at 4 o'clock. I do the initial pour. I pop the bubbles the first time. I go and eat dinner. Leave it alone for the rest of the night. Come back the next morning. It'll still be in this exact same liquid state after 12, 16 hours. Hit it with the torch again. And then at 24 hours, torch it one more time. And then after that, you're good. At 24 hours, it'll be like taffy. You'll be able to manipulate it. That's what we were just talking about. Just turn the volume up. It'll be like taffy, and you'll be able to try and do designs, but if you put enough metallic flaking in there, it'll turn on itself marble anyways. So you really don't have to mess with it. But don't, this is one of the other nice things about this product is you don't have to babysit it. So like when you have a real quick cure time, when I had my previous product, once I poured, I was married to that thing for 4 hours, just sitting and popping bubbles, nonstop. With this, like I said, I pour it around 4 o'clock. I walk away for the day after I pop the initial bubbles, and then get it again the next morning, and then one more time at 24 hours, and then it's done. So whatever bubbling is there, don't even sweat it. I'll pop these again before we leave because we got another class here at 1:30. And then Ann, who was helping checking everybody in, she'll pop them again Monday morning. And they'll be able to pop one more time at that point. The thicker you pour, the shorter your cure time is. So 1.5 inches, remember 1.5 inches is your maximum. But if you've poured, you've popped, you're good to go for the day. Like I said, when you come back next week, just throw your gloves in the trash for me. If you've emptied out packets, go throw them in the trash. We'll handle your buckets. That's it. I'll see you guys next week. Your boards will be here. You get to try and pick out which one it is. Be ready for it to be real white and hazy. White and hazy when you see it because it had been run through the planer. It's going to have been machined, and then you're going to sand it down and bring it back to this next week.